welcome to We Need Men. I'm Matt, MC Warrior the Light, and I'm here today with Conor Homan.
Nice to meet you. Thank you, Matt. It's good to be here.
Thank you for being here, brother.
Yeah,
I have to say, may I reflect some things back to you?
absolutely.
I really appreciate your depth in your being. There's this authenticity that you hold in your expression, in your masculinity, that I think is absolutely amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I first found out about you through Danielle of Harmonious Hearts on one of her videos on her channel. And at the time, I was going through a really, really intense and dark time. How you were describing, at least what you were going through,
Mm.
was this initiation and fall from grace. You were mentioning Icarus. And that's and I could not, I was like, yes, fuck yes, that's exactly it. Because I was going through an initiation myself, and that was exactly it, is I, in my own way, in my own story, flew too close to the sun and fell not just back to Earth, but all the way
Yeah,
to the underworld.
yeah,
And you put it in such perfect wording. I was like chef's kiss. Yes, that's it. Because I was going on months of this, trying to conceptualize
yeah.
what I was going through, and you said it in such a beautiful and perfect way.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that. So, one of the things when I was growing up, my mom's a writer. So, I was born and then I grew up learning how to write. So, that was a job and it put my mind at ease because my mind had one thing to do was just find the right words that my heart was telling me to put down. So like that made a job for my mind, but it also there's only certain words that can be used. So when people would talk about their emotional experience, like when I was a kid, my sister would be telling something about, something that happened in high school. And she would say something, I would go like I would wince because it was the wrong word. And so, everybody has their expression. It was what really needed to go through, and then that was just more and more refined as the more I grew up and went along this. And then the Icarus Point, which was interesting because that came to me, funny enough, like I knew of the Greek myth, but it came to me from a song. Actually, the lyrics of the song, which is a song I've heard about and listened to most of my life, was everybody's trying to hold on to me like Icarus. I'm just trying to walk by the stores and avoid cigarettes. And I was just like, that was a good contrast what he was explaining. But when I heard Icarus, I'm just like, no, this is my Icarus point. I'm just like, this is the fall from the sky. And I was falling faster than I could stabilize, and
Mm.
nothing would work, absolutely nothing. Like, and I tried all the tricks I currently had, all the tools I currently had, and it didn't work.
Huh.
And then I called on everybody that I could, and that would, I wouldn't say that there was no effect, but it didn't nullify the falling.
Mm.
Just like it just continued and continued and continued. And I'm just like, okay, like this is it. Like we're at least falling, and there was no option but to continue. I'm just like, okay. And I knew what was the problem because when you were soaring, it wasn't wrong. And that's the thing. It's like the story of Icarus and its Greek myth was that it was wrong for him to fly so close to the sun.
Mm.
And that's where I differ. It was just like it wasn't wrong. It was like it was needed. Like that was guided. I was incorporating energy in a scale I'd never seen myself do before. And I was going on to all these places and I needed to. The thing that I was always questioning was there wasn't a grounding point. So it wasn't like I was expanded and not out of my body. I was in my body, but all this wasn't landing. And I'm just like, that caused me a little bit of concern, but I'm just like, what? Can't do anything but just continue. And then when that fall happened, I knew it was a balancing point because I had soared so much that the balance had to be experienced as well. And then that was the main focus of going into the dark, was how do I stabilize in every facet of my life? What does that mean? How can you go so deep that you actually stabilize your energy? Like, how can I stabilize it so this doesn't happen again in a way? So that's what led me into the dark and what pulled me in. So,
Wow, that's I thank you for sharing that, brother. I
yeah,
feel all of that. Completely resonate.
yeah,
That was a big moment for me is realizing I did nothing wrong.
yeah,
Because anytime you experience stress, dis-ease, discomfort, there's like, I did something wrong.
yeah,
And I even remember after the initial event, I was driving back home. Was using my GPS to get home. And it's this road that I've taken a lot in recent times.
yeah.
And it redirected me way off the highway through some towns. And I'm just like, what are you doing? I saw no slowdown, no traffic. It didn't even warn me about anything. But all of a sudden, it took me off the main highway to go through a town. And my intuition was like, this is a blessing in disguise.
Mm.
And I leaned into it. I was like, okay, okay, okay. This is a blessing in disguise. I don't know why it is. I trust that it is for a reason. And turns out there was like traffic, there was slowdowns, there was construction, whatever. There was something that I found out about later on. And I realized it was a metaphor for the fall, that this is a blessing in disguise. Because I remember getting to in this analogy, getting to the sun, flying towards the sun. I remember checking myself, like, should I be doing this? And it just felt right. It was like I was just getting, yes, go for it, all this stuff. So I felt so betrayed by my own intuition and my guides when that did happen. But seeing it objectively, seeing it from a higher perspective, it was so freaking perfect, the whole thing.
Yeah,
And during the continual fall, even after the blessing in the skies, I was like, yeah, 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 but it still continued to get darker. And I'm gonna reference as I'm seeing this now is the beginning of Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, when Gandalf is fighting the fire demon, falling into that crevice that just keeps going. He actually leans into it and he's falling into it to fight it and everything. So for me, though I was trying to grab hold of everything on the way down, and I was trying to make it less and be like, oh, this is only for a little bit, and just it continued to slip. Like find a point that I would get to and then continue to fall. What for me was the best thing was to lean into it, was to just
yeah,
go head first, down and down and down. And I remember when I hit the bottom. Honestly, the bottom wasn't as dark as so much of the resistance during the fall in the beginning. When I finally was at the bottom, it was this relief. It was this relief where I was like, where now I know, and I knew it was the bottom. It was this moment I had, this clarity, and it was just in that moment how nothing mattered. How everything I've done up until that point, if I left my body, my avatar now, and how just this moment of lack of a burden of how nothing mattered, at least in that moment, and that was liberating and freeing to be at that bottom.
yeah,
And I needed that.
yeah. Because the dark is like you can't avoid it. Like how it appeared to me was literally like something grabbed a hold of my ankle and just pulled me down. And when I was feeling into it, I came to this realization that, like you said, like I was trying to stabilize when that wasn't working. I'm just like, okay, like what is this really? And then it was the words that came through. It was like, well, this is the reflection of the core wound, and you need to find stability. And I was just like, okay, then, and I looked at it and I said, okay, I don't care what it takes. I will heal this. And I was just like, let's go in. And that was an interesting dive into the dark because it happened and it continued and continued and continued. And I won't say that it wasn't without, a lot of really, really beautiful moments. Like there was when it first started, I just remember like was crying out for my soul essence and to source. And I was just using my guidance. And I said, look, you've got to send me somebody that understands this. You've got to. Like, I need something that I can talk to, basically. And then the next day, it was like a couple days later, I ran into my yoga teacher, Velvet, and she was, to say a bright light in all of this is an understatement. Like she was
Mm.
really instrumental in that. And then through that, I was introduced to Jen and Tanya Rita, who were amazing. I mean, they gave me a home. Like I really could not ask for more. And so the entire way through this, and they were up for it basically, because I was just like, no, I want to go into the dark and I want to find this. And they're just like, okay, perfect. Like we can do that. And they held the space, and I became a part of their life for a time, and they forever have a place in mine. And then
Mm.
through that, I ran into Danielle. Like her videos suddenly came up on my field. And so it was a lot of like female energy actually to start it, basically, because that was the whole reflection point, right? It was the not being able to hold the feminine properly led into the fall, that
Mm.
then women came in directly as a result of that. So I was just like, I don't know if I'm poisoned or not. And it was just like, well, no, that's what I have to work on. So perfectly.
Mm.
And then when the men came in, actually, it was really amazing because it was a group of guys that were local. And so they held ceremony and they were really good. And I just remember the first time I met one of my mentors, and I would tell him that, yeah. And it would be Jim, basically. And when I was talking to Jim, that was the first thing I asked him. It's probably around March. So my fall happened right in December. Like it was fall, like really fast. And then March, it was when I kind of met Jim. So everything was moving incredibly fast, even though it was felt like incredibly dense. And like when I was going into Jim, that was the first question I asked him. Was we were setting up ceremony, and I looked at him and I'm just like, what do you do when you make mistakes? And he's just like, well, it's just a learning experience. I'm just like, no, I get that. It's like, what do you do when you make a mistake when it's resulting this kind of stuff? And he's just like, because I said it just feels like it's 10 times worse. And he goes, ooh, well,
Mm.
you're not wrong. And he was just like, but he's just like, at the end of the day, you've got, I always look back and I've got a house over my head, and I've got water, and I've got air in my lungs. And just like, what more do I honestly need? And so when we talked about that moment, probably a year later, he was kind of laughing. He's just like, well, to sum it up more eloquently, it's just like a mistake is not a mistake until you know it's a mistake and you do it anyways. Otherwise, it's not a
Mm.
mistake. So that's where it's just part of it, and you just have to continue. And then it's actually a really beautiful moment, and it's a laughable moment too, if you can get to that place where you're just like, man, this is hilarious to watch it, honestly. So that brings in some of the levity, and then everything kind of breaks up where you can just see it. But yeah, the darkness, and I would say like the true dark, because there's a synthetic dark as well. So
Yeah.
the true dark is like, there's nothing, I don't hold any ill towards it. It is a really big mirror,
Yeah.
and you can't really circumnavigate it. It's just going to be there. So
And that was for me, I never had the concept of an initiation.
mm,
Like that was my initiation.
yeah,
And that word has, since I heard you in my reality coined it in that way, it has been very much in my vocabulary since then.
yeah. Well, and I didn't, honestly, the first time I heard it was from another guy on social media. Eli Marcus was his name, and he used that quite a bit. And so I since stopped following him, but the word was so perfect. I'm just like, no, this is an initiation. And every time I use that word, it always appeared to me like fire, like you're actually rising up to see the challenge and processing all the emotions and going through it. Like it's a whole testament of your entire being, basically. So it is an initiation into more of yourself. That's just like,
Mhm.
that word just seemed so appropriate. And then integration. I mean, you can, there's so many different words that like are perfectly set up, where it's the integration of the initiation, like that happens immediately afterwards, right? So it's just
Yeah.
like, okay, like I just went through this, now it's this little low point where I just have to like, okay, like I gotta hold this now. This is now new, quote unquote, right?
Yeah.
But it's something that is now a part of me, basically, because it's me. It's more of me.
I'd like to ask you your perception of the word initiation because I know that, like, I just got back from a men's initiation, which was
Yeah.
a group of men being initiated by each other. I know that I myself got initiated over a year ago from a following my guidance and intuition, like I just talked about. Initiation versus like awakening, because I would say even I
Oh,
awoken
yeah.
to a lot of universal truths years and years and years ago that perhaps was like I was awakened by an initiation, but just like the types of initiation and awakening, like what is the difference for our brothers and sisters watching? How would you define
I
these?
would say that when you come awake, like, and the way I look at it is that you can label everything as like initiation.
Hmm.
I don't, I wouldn't say awaken anymore, honestly, because it's kind of like that old a square and a rectangle thing. Like, every square is a rectangle, but not every rectangle is a square. Where
Yeah.
like you can look through it and just be like, no, that was definitely initiation, right? Because how it always appeared to me is like it's initiation more into yourself. And you can take that, and of course, like you can be initiated into a type of spiritual practice, right? So you're initiated by a bigger container that now you are welcome to use within it because you've been initiated and checked out basically to use the practices, right? And then also be a part of that container and then lead it, right? So
Hmm.
that could be in any religion. That would be like an initiation by another, right? Into a container to do it a certain traditional way. So that would be that kind of initiation. Then there's the kind of like self initiation where you face your own triggers. And I use that word where it's like you can feel the moment rise up. You can, like, you don't have to do any grand thing. You can be simply like coming home from work. Oh, yeah, I had that happen. You can be coming home from work, right? And just struggling to hold center. Well, what are you doing? Like, are you just struggling to hold center, or are you like actually processing more than you know and like struggling to hold that point of being within yourself in the face of all this? So I would label that as a point of initiation, right? Because you're doing something by
Hmm.
holding the truth within you and not succumbing to the stresses of the day or the seduction of the despair or anything. So, like that in itself, if you weather the storm, that's an initiation point because
Hmm.
your system's never going to forget that reference point, right? So, it's
Yeah.
just like the smallest moments can be that way. I have also used the term mountain initiation. So mountains and me talk really well. And that was a term that I always used to use. Like nobody told me, well, there was one guy that told me to go to a mountain, but most of the time nobody told me to go to the mountain. The mountain would tell me and just be
Hmm.
like, no, you got to come see me. And to be able to go to the mountain was a whole process of initiation on if you can go in the right way, do this, do that. And then it's also like once you did the initiation, that mountain was always beside me. And I was just like, wow, that's like a level of initiation. And I always say mountains are a little funny because they don't really care about your certain circumstances. But there's also water initiations where you can go to streams, waterfalls, rivers, right? Oceans, right? The shorelines, basically. There's all these different initiations basically led by the call. And I feel like that's such a good word for it. Awaken, like when I was awakened to it, was I feel like that's kind of like you can pinpoint to when you were first like, this is different, right? So for me, it was like 16. I remember that because my life was a certain way. And then I woke up and I'm just like, no, this is real. And we're gonna like this is real, basically. So your eyes kind of get dusted off. And it's a very kind of unique experience. So that's how I would label the two different.
Yeah, and I know it doesn't have to be some grand thing. I know I was talking to a brother of mine where he was deliberately initiating himself to teach himself how to build things with like power tools
Yeah.
and how that was going to reflect on other areas of his life. and that idea of deliberate self-initiation versus some kind of fall from grace or other kind of catalyst.
Yeah, the self, I mean, in the end of the day, like that's how I look at it. Like if you're going through initiation, it's more you're initiating more into yourself because you're able to hold more of yourself.
Mm.
That's the whole purpose in my book. And just like to be able to do that, like you're holding more of your energy to be able to do anything, basically. Even if you're like being initiated into, you know, let's say, yeah, let's say it's a native practice, right? You're being initiated into hold those kind of ceremonies, right? Well, to be able to do that, you have to have a certain level of your energy to be able to hold that level of energy within their traditions. So it's still the same thing. You're initiating into yourself to be able to hold more of yourself, to be able to like walk around and be able to do that, right? Because you can't hide anymore. That's the whole point of initiation. It's just like the hiding's done. It's just like you're coming aware so to everything, and then it's just like, okay, like where do you want to go? What's your choices in this decision that's laid in front of you? And then, depending on how you weather through that storm, like you can feel whether it's going to circle back around or if you've actually walked through the flames.
I know that there was a big thing that came up in the initiation that I went through with the men of you could do it this way or you could do it that way, but if you're lying to yourself, if you're trying to cut a corner, like you're just cheating yourself. And there's that, why are you here then? Other than to get the most out of it.
Yeah.
For your journey, what catalyzed your awakening?
There was a couple of them. So, like when I was 16, the thing that changed my life was my relationship to my brother. So, me and my brother were incredibly close.
Mhm.
And I didn't really fit anywhere, but I was in a church fraternity at the time. So, like, I was very devoutly religious, and my family is to some extent. And so, my brother came back from college and he was adamantly against the religion to the point where he was, because of everything he went through, like, he was very, yelling about it in the house basically because it was his time back from college. And I just remember like my internal system like couldn't place it, didn't like anything about it. So I remember the moment when we were having an argument in our old room, and I looked at him and said, well, I don't love you anymore. And
Mhm.
my mom, who is very religious, looked at me and said, you don't say that. And my whole system was very confused because I'm just like, I thought I did the right thing, but now I guess I didn't. And I was like, my whole system had to check itself. I'm just like, I don't know what's right, what's wrong. But from that moment, me and my brother, he used to just take me out and we would just drive around all night. And he would just explain what happened to him. And I would just listen. And the more that we talked, the more I was just like, no, I think he's right. I think there's something there. And then when I actually delved into it, my whole life changed, like in a way that, left the church, which was Catholic, and then got very, very quiet at school. There was an old radio podcast that I used to plug in when I would go back to high school, which was a Red Ice radio.
Mhm.
And I don't listen to it anymore, but Henrik Palmgren, like I used to listen to all that while Spanish class was going on. So this huge diet, like very distance, like what was happening within me and then what was happening in the reality, like I didn't understand it. And just I don't know how I make these two worlds meet, but this is definitely happening. And that was one of the big ones. And then eventually I graduated high school, and then I was, you had to get a job. So that was like the huge kind of turning point where I was entering into the physical world on my own 2 feet, and I didn't know how to integrate all the rest of it. So that was a huge point. Like when I hit 21, I had enough a handle on my intuition and knew I had really good gifts that I was just like, oh, okay, but I viewed them as tools and hobbies. I'm just like, no, 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 you belong to me. And I'm just like, all I want is a normal life. Because the more I was waking up, the more trauma I was becoming aware of. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
screw this. I want a normal life. And I tried my hardest to do it until basically everything in my life was fractured. And 21 was a huge tower moment for me. And then, yeah, it took about 3 years after that because I would say that my choices were ripped from me. Like I had no option but to listen to my heart first. And I was bitter about it. I was very bitter because I'm
Mm.
just like, all my power that I once had was gone. And I'm just like, no, you have to listen to your heart first. And it took longer than I thought, but it was about 3 years to heal my body. And then eventually, like, it was clicked into place. And I'm just like, okay, like, I'm back. Like, I'm finally back because of the shattering that occurred, how deeply that it happened. And then I got to be basically, I say sent, but I was like, got to find my way into Montana and start again. But it was like I was walking both worlds where I wasn't completely going to hammer this out and I had a handle on it. And it was also like, but I was going to have as much of a normal life as I could. So I was like, I was really good. I was a really good chameleon. And I'm just like,
Hmm.
perfect. And I wasn't going to neglect one for the other. My life wasn't 100%, but it was good for this moment. And I worked through things, and Montana was good. It was also like I couldn't really walk in the forest. And I didn't understand why, because that was always my home in Colorado. So I'm just like, okay, I had to force myself to go in the forest a couple times because everything was on edge and I never understood it. And then 2021, I was a big hockey nut at the time. So the Colorado Avalanche were going to the Stanley Cup. So this would have been 2022, somewhere around there.
Mm.
Anyways, they were going to the Stanley Cup. So my sister had bought Stanley Cup tickets that I didn't ask, but she said that I had to go with my dad. And immediately I'm just like, no, I'm not going to do that. And I remember talking to a UPS delivery driver because I was a warehouse manager at the time in Montana. And we were going back and forth, and he looked at me and he's just like, well, can you handle a day with your family? And I said, yeah. He was just like, well, then go. And I'm just like, okay. So I went, and originally my sister was just like, you know what? Like, you don't have to go with dad. Like, you can go with my brother in law. And I arrive, and my brother in law is sick. Like, everybody doesn't want to go. And the only person left is my dad. So I'm just
Hmm.
like, this is hilarious. Right.
The universe directed this, yeah.
Yeah. But I remember sitting in the hotel room, which was also funny because I got a hotel literally across the street from my childhood home because I'm just like, I'm
Mm.
not staying there. But I remember sitting in the hotel room and I was just like, man, why don't I want to go with my dad? I was just like, what's the thing? And then these memories started to come in, and I'm just like, oh, okay. And then immediately I just was very clear. I'm just like, well, this isn't going to run my life. So we're going to do this. And the entire way back to my childhood home, the neighborhood I grew up in, everything was hitting me like up to this point. It was the lead in of just like, man, I was a weird kid. Because if I was here now, I would be on the lakes and the trails like every single day. You couldn't pull me outside from outside. And I'm just like, what happened? Like, why was I such a weird kid? Because I was like very shut down. And so I was revisiting that and I was like, no, I was a weird kid. And then these memories started to come in. And then we went to the Stanley Cup final and we lost that night. And then I came home and my brother was back. So we went walking around the lake that was by our house. And so all the old stories started to come up, basically, of what had happened to us as kids. And, the spiral started to come in. And I just remember being like, no, I'm not going to do that. It wasn't refusing it, but I'm just like, I'm not going to succumb to that. And I just remember looking out of the lake and I'm just like, no, I'm here. Like, this had to happen.
Hmm.
This had to happen. I know that it did. And then the point that was very amazing was that the lake by my house, I remember looking at it, and the communication within the lake to me was a huge moment. And I just remember pointing at it and just like, you're the reason I'm alive. You're the reason. Because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here. Because I could feel the level of trauma and the level of darkness that was running through my system and what was happening to me when I was a kid, that the lake actually held me. I could actually see it. And it was this huge acknowledgement. I'm just like, you're the reason. You're the reason. So what's funny is that I
Wow.
had like up to this point of like 20 plus years of trauma that were gone like that. And I felt it. And I was really dumbfounded and amazed. I remember flying back to Montana, just feeling it all. And I'm just like, this is amazing. At the same time, yeah, my rebellious side came in again and it said, what I say? It was just like, well, fuck that. I didn't get a childhood. I want a childhood.
Mm.
So I went out and the next year I partied. Like it was a lot of drinking, a lot of fishing, fishing and drinking. It was a lot of that. And I was just trying to chase something that I felt was stolen from me. And I'll never forget it because it was, let's see, it must have been December of 2022. I woke up in a hospital in Whitefish, Montana from alcohol poisoning, basically. And I just remember the moment I woke up, I'm just like, the first words that entered my head were from my guidance. And just like, you can't do this anymore. And I was pretty miserable. I'm just like, yep, yep, I know, I
Mm.
got it. And then what was really funny is that the security guard had like stayed past his shift and to see me wake up because he watched me get brought in. And he said something very funny. He's just like, man, I just want to tell you that I see a lot of people and you are the nicest guy. You told me you loved me 3 times. And I just like, all right, well, there's a little bit of bright light, right?
Yeah.
So quit drinking cold turkey and then just started running. And then my guidance and my gifts started to flow in. And I was just like, okay, we'll see how this happens. I didn't know that I was on the doorsteps of my Saturn return. So
Mm.
that happened later. I just was following all this. I wasn't really paying attention to astrology. I was just like, just the everyday. So from January into May was a whole different thing because there was going to be a retreat that was held in England. And it's been a while. I had done 2 trips before to Ireland solo. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm probably due for an international trip and I just want something fun. And I knew something would happen because every time I traveled abroad, the 2 times prior was Ireland and then Ireland, Australia, like something amazing happened. And I'm just like, okay, well, that's probably going to happen, but I'm down for adventure. So let's just do it. Let's see what I want to see and all that kind of stuff. So I was going to fly into Aberdeen, Scotland, and fly out from Lisbon, Portugal.
Mm.
So the lead up into that, like a bunch of things were starting to change. Like my direction was becoming more and more front and center for me because I had a really good job. I was a manager. I had reached the peak of my current position, so I didn't know where I was going to go. I wasn't making enough money I probably could scrounge a house, but I was like wanting more basically. And so I wanted land and this and that. And I was just like, okay, well, that would make me feel stable. So maybe I'll do this. I didn't know where it was being pulled. So then when May happened, I took a flight to Scotland. And that's when like really the activation really kicked off
Mm.
because it was on a level that I hadn't seen before. So like I was on a train to the ferry point to the Orkney Islands and I was writing down all the places I wanted to see. And I just remember my pen stopped and I just looked up in the train car and just like, this isn't my trip, is it? And I'm just like, no. And I crossed everything out. And I was like, okay, where do you want me to go? And that
Wow.
was a whole, go to this stone circle, go to that stone circle. There was a stone circle I came up to that I did it in the wrong way. So I got to experience what that was like and how the mistake was made. So there was a huge learning point with that.
Mm.
There was all these different things like entities popped up along the way, which was very fun because they were just like, no, we were waiting for you. So that was something in my system was a healing point in itself because my entire childhood, they would pop up in my room and then it was like, fight or flight, go time,
Yeah.
battle, you know. So to feel it in that way, where it's just like, no, we've been waiting for you, was like my whole system had to rewire at that point and then continue. And then England it's a whole world of its own, which I didn't think I would like, but that was an initiation on itself with the feminine. And then going into Portugal, like at that point, by the time I reached Portugal, I knew that wasn't my trip, but it was me. But it was also like there was more energy running through me. So there was no breaks. I was kind of like, no, go here, go there. Towards the end, my human Conor was getting kind of like, whew, okay, I'll see how far I can do this. And I remember it ended in a cave in
Mm.
Portugal. And that was really magical in itself because I didn't book it. I didn't anything. You're supposed to book a tour. And I showed up and it's all gated off. And the tour guide was there. And the people that had booked it canceled like last minute. So
Yeah.
she's like, no, like you're not, you're supposed to do this and this and this, but you're here. So I'll give you the tour. And then it was, once I was in that cave and I came out, I just felt it. I'm just like, oh, all right, well, I'm going to the ocean because I need that. So, and then when I came back from Montana, that's when I would say that's when it was the soaring into the sun. Basically, that's what started because that whole trip itself was like the initiation where I could see heaven embodied and everything. And I could see more of myself than I ever have before. So I'm just like, oh man, okay. And then when I came back to Montana, I'm just like, well, I'm not stopping. Like, there's no way I'm stopping. So let's continue. And then Montana started to open up. And so the mountains started to speak to me, which is like, I was wondering when that was going to happen, if it ever was. And so when that happened, then I understood why Montana was always kind of like a place of edge for me because I never did the introduction. I never like asked. I just kind of hiked. I'm just like, oh, that would explain a lot. And then, you know, then I started going to these native speaks, which was amazing. And then one night I thought it was very laughable. I had an old friendship with husband and wife, and they were going to the rodeo. So like that same day, I drove up to the border of the reservation in a national park, went to a native speaks, came back, and then went to the rodeo. And I'm just like, we haven't changed. It's still cowboys and Indians. It's like nothing's changed. So I'm just like, I would rather be with the Indians than the cowboys, but
Yeah.
it was
Wow.
yeah. And then yeah, the trip in Montana was amazing because there was a specific mountain that called, but to get to it, like there was initiation after initiation. So every single mountain, every single waterfall that I was told to go to, like it was another thing. Like there was a actual glacier in Montana that I went to, and it was holding my my infant self. Like to
Mm.
experience that, I was just like, I haven't experienced this level of love. I'm just like, no, 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 like feel it. And also, those water bodies are very funny because I was coming with kind of like a little bit of arrogance with the mountains, of being like, well, I can talk to mountains and I can go through this and all that kind of stuff. And the water bodies, first thing with the glaciers, just like, that's funny. I make mountains. And just so it was kind of like a whole rewiring of just like, okay, yeah, we're dealing with something a little bit bigger now. So and then that was a whole journey, like being pulled, and then went back to England. And then that was a whole integration and initiation in itself. That was a huge thing where I got to see so much more. But it was also like a checkoff point because I didn't know it at the time, but that was the last time until the energy started to fall. And I'm just like, this was the point of reference before you jump off the cliff. And I was just like, oh. And I didn't realize that until probably months later, but I could see it. And then when I came back from Montana, it was no, oh, I can continue. It's just like, no, there is no more continue. I was just like, this is kind of scary. Like the mountains weren't calling, the waterfalls weren't calling, the streams weren't calling. And I started to panic because I'm just like, that was the only way that the energy could continue. And just like, nope. And I sat with it and I felt my energy start to, and I was like, oh, and then it picked up. And then that was like the level of despair and the darkness that kind of consumed me was huge. And then it really fell. And then I had to continue on. Like that was the thing. The when the mountains and streams called when I was afterwards. So I'm in my darkness, right? I'm in the underworld. Like
Mhm.
Honor doesn't want to come out to play. Like this is just like whatever this is, we're gonna try and heal it. But I'm gonna be frank, like I have pretty much next to nothing to operate my system with.
Mhm.
And when the mountains and the streams and the sacred places would call, I'd be like, I'm in no shape, absolutely no shape to show up in the way that you request. It's just like, doesn't matter. You got to come. And I was just like, okay,
Mhm.
like I'll answer this. So that was interesting in itself because it was more about having a place of being, basically, and every moment and continuing than showing up in what you thought was the right way. It's just like, look, if you feel the call, like it's you got to go. And that's what kept going. And then there was a huge point, I would say around that summer, because it was quick. Like my energy happens really, really quick. Right. So it was a quick kind of turnaround. Didn't feel like it. But that summer, there was an initiation point that was tenfold, like amazing, really, because it was to do with a mountain. And that was the cap. It was like the darkness had been reached. Like all the stuff that went through to go into it, there was a lot that had to go. Like there was a lot of people I had to go see. There was a lot of places I had to go see to see within myself. Like there was energetic pockets so deep and down that I didn't know if I would ever come out of them. But when I came up and walking up that mountain, it was the turning point. And I felt it because I just like something had been reached finally, finally. And then everything could be looked at prior and be like, that had to happen the way it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy shit. You have had quite a few years.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride. It's getting to the good part finally. So yeah.
And that's what that was going to be my next question is if you care to share, if you
Yeah.
feel open to share from here, what's next?
Well, so I should probably share what happens with like when the land spoke to me in Montana. That was a huge part of my being, right? So then it was continuing that. So little places would call. So when I left Montana, it was a whole thing, right? Because the place I landed is on sacred land, basically.
Hmm.
It's a very, very interesting place to land. So I should probably explain how that happened. There was a ceremony that was held by one of my mentors. And when I went there afterwards, I was kind of in an altered state. So, like, very clear. And I heard the words that you must work with the woman in South Colorado. So, in that ceremony, there's a woman from Montana who was living at the time in Colorado Springs. So, I just connected the dots and I'd be like, perfect, no problem.
Hmm.
It never turned out to be her. Like, nothing ever came
Yeah.
about it. But I always kept it in my back pocket. I'm just like, we'll see. Then when I was called to go to Big Bear, California, I met a woman there who, when we started talking, she's just like, well, there's this piece of land in South Colorado. You have to come see it. And I had already booked a trip to Colorado to go see my sister when she was bringing her family out here in the middle of July. So I'm just like, well, I'll just extend my trip. Like, no worries, I'll be there because like I kind of connect the dots. Didn't tell her about it, but I'm just like, that's funny. And just like, okay, like there it is. So then when I came out here to do that, the first thing was in North Colorado. So that mountain initiation where everything was kind of revisited and then put to rest and then continued. That in itself was an amazing moment. And then I drove down all the way to South Colorado and then met the woman who I met in California. And then she introduced me to the woman who owns this land. And so she was hesitant to kind of show it because she had chores. She wasn't feeling good that day. And the woman that introduced me was her name was Linda. It's just like, Linda, you can show Conor. And Linda's eyes got big and just like, no. And so Jennifer said, well, I can't do it today. And so she had a puppy at the time and I held the puppy and she was looking at me and she was like, okay, I'll take you. So when we walked in, it was more of a test, right? So she did her normal talk about what the land is and the history of it. And then once she got a feel for me, it was more of just like she would bring me to a spot and just be like, okay, tell me what you see. And I'd be like, well, I see this, 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 and this. And she's like, good. Okay, continue. And then we would go into the next place and like, tell me what you see. And I'd be like, okay, well, I see this, 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 and this. And she's like, okay. So when we were walking, I started to hear the land. So that was very interesting. So it said two things to me. One, it said, I hold codes of peace. You must learn my codes of peace. And then it showed me a whole vision. Touching that energy was something I'd never touched before. And I'm just like, okay, this is something amazing. And then the second thing was It asked me, I'm waking up. I need to get plugged into the grid. And so Connor wasn't really speaking, but immediately I said, oh, I know how to do that. I can get you clicked into England. And afterwards, I'm just like, man, what I sign up for? So go back to Montana. Like I was born in Colorado, so I was very clear that I didn't want to go back. So I'm just like, look, this all happened. We'll see. Like I was very 1 foot out. Went to another ceremony in Montana with a different mountain, very sacred mountain, and talking to that mountain, it told me like you got to go back down to Colorado. I'm just like, you're not listening. Like my heart sings with the ocean. And just like, no, this is how you get to the ocean, Connor. You have to go. And I'm just like, okay. So this was opening the door and then seeing if it would all play out. Like at the time, there was no guarantees. And so I wound up here very divinely timed. And so now being on the foot of this very special land and then being able to walk it. So listening to that and then seeing where that kind of goes from there. So the channel, my own channel, kind of like taking off a little bit with the channeled messages that come in from that,
Hmm.
but also like the website and the things that are just now ready to come in because I felt them for so long was just like, but they're now just ready because it was a lot of places that I went to, like they hold a code, they hold an essence of energy that
Yeah.
is really amazing. But like to be able to hold that requires a lot of respect and etc. So that's some of the places that I went to and saw and then been with. It's been really amazing to see some of the crystalline cores of some of these places and then feel the things that they hold and then be gifted those as well. Because that's a whole other thing too, because you have to be able to hold it. And I learned the hard way of that. So seeing how it all unfolds. And then just next week, I'll be going back to England, which is also guided. So we'll see how this is just the part of the fun adventure of life, but also kind of like you have to hold no expectation, but completely because more of your energy comes online, right? So it's pilgrimage in some ways where you're just like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I have no idea how this is going to show up. I know that the mountains and streams and places are going to call. I have to make sure that I come in the right way. Like there's a bunch of things that happen on so many different dimensions that you're actually carrying so many different energies too. It's a multi-dimensional story that's happening in real time.
Yeah.
So the best thing you can do is not think about it, honestly, and just really make sure that you're coming in the right way and listening and not overextending your welcome.
Hmm. Wow. Everything you said was just wow. Really no words. I felt just a lot of light codes too
Yeah.
in what you were saying. The pilgrimage resonates with me because I just got back from the pilgrimage. And like you said, it wasn't planned. I was just listening.
Yep.
It was co-creative because there were parts for me like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And I felt that there was other necessities, and how it even was started was an obligation. Like me as a man, my word is law. Like if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. That's part of my integrity. After the initiation, I wanted to stay longer because I could just feel and I saw all these opportunities to welcome and keep me. And I was like, yeah, and I could just feel this potential of being there. But I had to come back home for an obligation, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do both. I don't know how I'm going to stay and or go back and do what I got to do. So I just surrendered it. And I remember it was a small town in Florida that I was walking around, and it was at night, and I was just externalizing, like talking to myself, externalizing this, having this dialogue with myself and the universe. And I remember this like weevil or beetle flew on my finger. And I was like, shoot, get off. Like it like kind of locked in on my finger, and I'm not gonna hurt it or kill it. So I was like doing with my strength not to hurt it to push it off, and it wouldn't budge. So I was like, all right, this is my friend. I'm just gonna walk around with you and we'll see what happens. And I continue to go through the process, and I got this intuition of like, oh, maybe I'd do both in a certain way of it happening. And immediately the beetle flew off. And I was like, I think that's a sign. And like that was a confirmation. And talking to my friend who I was visiting, he had an idea and it worked out. So I was able to come back, honor my word, then go back down, booked a flight, left all my stuff there. really cheap flight, and then I was able to continue on the pilgrimage, and the amount of information I got consciously and unconsciously, I don't fathom. The amount of seeds that were given to me and even germinated, like I feel so full. Like when you eat a big meal, I'm like, oh my, like energetically, I feel full. And so typically in things like that in the past, I would have been so sad and just like, no, I don't want to leave. But I felt ready. I was like, yeah, this is it. It's time to go back. It's time to take those germinated seeds and plant them and allow them to bud. And what is next? And being present in that. I love everything you were saying too. Just I love your connection with bodies of nature, like
Mm.
mountains, rivers, the entities of these bodies that they are. And I
Yeah.
love that you have this sensitivity. And I love when you were in England, how you approached a stone structure from the wrong angle. It's such a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Even with the woman, how you were saying how she's like, what do you see? And I saw
Yeah.
like Jedi Master Jedi kind of deal where it's like this savant mastery. And she was like, yeah, very good. Okay, cool. And move on. And I see this ancient wisdom with you and how you connect these areas, like from indigenous Americans to even humans in England and Ireland, and how that area came to you and said, I'm activating. And you're like, I
Yeah.
can do that.
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing.
Well, and it's been really fun. The words that came from my soul were the restoring the original blueprint. And that was what the
Yeah.
words came in. So, but what's really funny is that a lot of these places, they have their own personalities, but they also have their own wisdom, which, I mean, it's incredibly human. That's what I always come back to. It's just like this place is like so sacred and so like you can feel all the energy, but the expression in the relationship is very human. It's kind of like trust is built, right? So it's like you can be called to a place all day. And that's the thing. It's just like once you have the call, I think a lot of things go out the window. And I don't think that's correct. Because it's like you can have the call, there still is coming in the right way, really,
Mhm.
with the place, right? And it's not like specifically following a tradition or something like that. It is listening to the place and wondering, like, actually giving it the time of day, right? The analogy I used to explain this one time was like, imagine you're sitting in a coffee shop and you're sitting at a table and someone walks in the door and you wave to them because you like your fork fell on the ground and you say, hey, come here. And the person comes immediately to you, stands right beside you, never acknowledges you. And it's just like, okay, pick up the fork, picks up the fork, puts it on your table, but never says anything to you. It's like you answered the call, but there's no
Yeah.
relationship, right?
Yeah.
So, like a lot of these things, when they hold something, it's just like you have to be able to hold it to be gifted it. Honestly, it is a gift, right?
Yeah.
It's an exchange, right? You don't just get to come in and like take the place's wisdom. I want to be like, no, I came here, I deserve this. It's like, no, 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 that does not what happens. But if you feel it, like then it's like you're almost carrying that. And there's connection points. There's things that, and it's not important really to figure it all out. Like I've gotten bogged down before on that. It's just like, no, just listen and follow, just continue with the process. There's more happening, but I don't need to know all of it. I know I already do, but I don't need to know. Like my mind can't currently
Yeah.
keep up with all of it. And that's fine. That's completely fine.
Yeah.
There was a mound in Florida that I remember that when I went there the first time, it was really good, felt like home. Coming to the mound, it showed me like its wisdom, basically. It showed me it, but it wasn't going to gift it. And I'm just like, okay, like I
Mhm.
wasn't going to take it. I wasn't going to push on it, but it's just like, no, no, you're not ready. And I was just like, I didn't take that as an insult. I'm just like, okay. And I came back 4 days later, completely guided. And then that was the day that it all kind of synced up and was like entered my body. And I remember feeling that and be like, okay, like this is something different now. But it's amazing. The places talk. They do, and they have their own personalities, and they tell jokes too. I mean, I don't get why people don't say that. It's like, yeah, they tell jokes. They're every one of them is a little bit different personality. I had a river that was, she was way more stern, way more stern,
Hmm.
way more warrior like than what I've experienced before. But that was her essence basically. And she demanded that, right? And then there's been some lovely mountains that like really have held such a point, and some trees too. I remember like when I was first being a little kid, like not understanding this because I didn't like aspen trees. And when
Hmm.
someone would ask me that, I'm just like, well, I just feel like there's too many voices. It's just like I can't hear them all, and they're just too many voices, and it feels agitated. Just like, well, then makes sense when you get older because a aspen tree is like a whole organism, like a whole
Yeah.
forest is an organism. So it's just
Yeah.
like, oh, like a hive mind in some ways. No
Yeah.
wonder I couldn't hear it, that kind of thing.
That's funny. I know I have had my own experiences with communicating with trees, mountains, mainly ocean. Ocean was something I have this deep respect for. I call her Goddess Ocean. To me, she's like feminine,
Yeah,
like very like Kali energy, where she's like very beautiful and very destructive at the same time. This a great equalizer. Like, sea level. She's just this medium energy that is fertile, that gives life to coral reefs and everything that's within her, and then also just takes out coastal territories. Like it's just she's powerful.
yeah,
I know when I visited her, there's this cleansing, like standing in the surf and having when she pulls away, just feeling this energy going through my feet and out. And so I know that just like you were saying, it's a relationship, and you acknowledging her and sharing gratitude and thanking these beings for what they offer.
yeah,
And even the exchange too is I make an effort to make an offering or an exchange. And I remember one of the first times I did it, I was like, all right, I want to actually give something to the ocean. I want to make an offering to the ocean. Of course, what does she need? She doesn't need anything. There's nothing I can give her that she needs. But like an exchange, I saw it had to be a sacrifice on my end. Like it had to be closer to something, perhaps like for it to be exchanged, it had to be taken away from something for me to in exchange for what she gave me.
yeah.
So what I remember what I got was I went to a local crystal store and got like a big raw rose quartz crystal. And something that was kind of pricey because it was a sacrifice of the monetary exchange for what she gave me. And I remember I just took her out immediately. Like I walked from the shop across the street onto the beach and just said thank you and just chucked it into the ocean, chucked it into her just as a exchange. I remember the person's like, "Do you need a receipt?" I'm like, "No, I don't need a receipt for this. I know what I'm doing with this." So to me, that was a profound realization of the exchange and relationship, whether that's like proper or right or anything. It just felt like that's how I honored what the exchange of the relationship with this entity.
Yeah. Well, and like each one is a little bit different, right? So it's kind of like there was three rivers in Montana that I went to go meet, and each one was a different personality, and each one was a little bit different. So like opening the door when I was communicating to the first one is very easy, like very nice, very soft and sweet, and just wanted like a little piece of my hair. And I'm just like,
Mm.
of course you can have a piece of my hair. So cut off a piece of my hair, gave it to the waters. The second one, who was way sterner, like way more warrior-esque, she's
Mhm.
just like, no, I want a piece of your meat. And I'm just like, okay. So that was like a flesh offering, right? So you had to like cut off a little bit of skin, basically, and be like, okay, here you go. The last one, she was very funny, like very, very sweet, very potent. And when I was talking to her, she's like, no, I want a song. And I'm just like, well, I only know one song. And it was a song that I wrote basically for somebody. And I just remember being like, this is the only song I have that I remember. And I'm just like, and I don't like, this is it. And she's like, yeah, I want that one. And I'm just like, so each one was a little bit of a test, basically, like of the whole exchange. But that's been some of it has been like, you answer the call, you show up, you go. Basically, that's been a lot of the mountains. Like it's been a very gifting from the mountains, I would say, because it's like to show up, like the whole part that you're giving is the whole walk up, right? Because it's going to be tests and trials along the way.
Mm.
and your ability to continue is what you're doing basically. And there's been, I remember one water like requested the crystal that I had that meant a lot to me.
Mm.
And they're just like, no, I want that. So it's just like, okay, like this is it. So I mean, you hear it, and then it's just listening to that part of it and then following through. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. This is awakening, reminding me of a lot of things. Like one ocean interaction was I was just thanking her. And I was like one evening, one night, I was by myself on this beach, just in the warm water, just splashing and going, thank you. And I remember she was rough. She was like knocking me down because I think she was kind of like saying you're welcome, but also just like remember how powerful I am and just complete awe and surrender to how powerful she is compared to my human avatar that I would have typically think is pretty strong compared to an ocean, not so much.
Right.
What are you most passionate about?
Land. Honestly, land. So that communication with land, that's what one of the things I'm most passionate about. The dance between two. So the masculine and feminine, like actually being able to sit together, honestly, that's a big point because there's a bunch of initiations that have to happen on both. But when you can come and actually meet, a lot more energy moves. But like that's what I'm all about. Is like going to see the rivers and streams, talking to the spirits of the land, seeing the trees, the water, that kind of thing. That's my bread and butter that I love to do.
Mm,
Honestly, that's what I'd say most passionate about, but it's also like all of it intersects too, because the love you have there is also reflective of the love. You can't really do it without like having some relationship to with like to the feminine in general. A lot of these
mm.
places are feminine, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be disingenuous if that wasn't part of it. So all of it is part of it, basically. So the integration between, let's see, I call it the love between two. So it's the masculine and feminine, right?
Mm,
Coming together and actually being able to talk. That was one of my big criticisms of what I would see in men's work in the past was that it would be like a group of guys. And I always kind of looked at it and just like, okay, what's the point of this? I don't get the point if the feminine like isn't a focal point. Like I'm just like, I get it. We're not doing it for it. But at the same time, what's the point of being a guy on a feminine planet if you're not going to relate it back to that? Like it didn't make sense to me. I'm just like, this is like a hamster wheel. I'm just like, you have to be able to hold, you have to be able to stand in front of like entire, like the embodied feminine, basically. And if you can't, like there's no harm or no foul, but it's showing you something within your system that needs to kind of go through that.
yeah.
And that has been reflective in so many different things. There's been springs that are so immensely feminine that like walking up to it has been triggering on levels that I never thought would be. That's the land essence married with the masculine meeting the feminine, right? So there's
Yeah.
so many different aspects to this, but I would say that one of my things that I always love is talking to land, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. It shows in so much of what you have already shared.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Full. Do you care to go more into, because I know it's a focal point in a lot of your videos, in a lot of your messages, is the masculine and feminine
Yeah.
dynamic and perspective. Do you care to share anything about your own experience or even just like your message at all?
Yeah. I think it's so like the masculine initiation, right? So that's what I call it, at least on the videos, is the
Mhm.
divine masculine initiation, right? And how it's always appeared to me is basically like, all right, so when I was first coming online, like there were some guys that could hold a really good charge, but the biggest and brightest places that I always went to were always held by women. And there's no harm, no foul, right? But I just remember looking at that and being like, okay, it kept appearing up, right? Because of the energy they held. And every time I would look at that, I'm just like, okay, where's the masculine in all this? I'm just like, I don't understand. Like, I get it. That was a really big thing with me, was just like, one, I was looking at it and I could feel how much the masculine held, but at the same time, looking at it and being like, what's the point of being a guy on a feminine planet? Like, there is a reason for this. honestly. There's a reason for this. And I didn't feel like it was hit.
Hmm.
And so the dance between two, I mean, you can see it reflected on so many different things. Like a woman, when she's like shining bright, is what I always say, right? But when she's really embodied, whether intentionally or not, what I've seen and what I've heard and done from my own experience is that sometimes you just ask her to dim down a little bit because you can't handle it, right? So it's
Hmm.
just like, no, that's too bright, right? And when I'm looking at that, I'm just like, okay, well, if I was really embodied in my masculine energy, like there would be no request of that in some ways, because it would be an actual encouragement of her to be more of who she really is. So that was the essence of the masculine energy. I'm just like, okay, it was feeling into this. And then the more deeper you went, the more you hit these different pockets, right? So my quest for stability, one of the things that was amazing with Danielle's help was that the deeper I went into the earth, because I was looking for a stability point. So I knew it had to be in the earth, right? Because you're on the earth. So I needed to connect back to that point. When you're going down, like that level of distortion was there. And that's where I felt most of the masculine energy
Hmm.
was entombed in this place. And when I touched it, like there was no reason, no accident why nobody wants to go there. Because the darker it got, the more it felt like all the wars, all the distortions from whatever was held within the masculine energy, like throughout all time,
Yeah.
was sitting in this kind of festering pool. And like feeling it, I didn't know where it ended and where I began. And I'm just like, oh, okay.
Wow.
But it also made sense to me. I'm just like, okay. And then that's when the masculine collective as a whole, I started to get messages from them because, like, from that moment, they kept pointing back to the cave. And it was more of a direction towards the feminine collective, which is like, they can't see this. They can't see this.
Yeah.
And so when I was feeling that, it was this kind of like this dance between two in this meeting point, right? Because there's so much distortion between men and women. There's no
Hmm.
accident. The energy was split between them, right? When it like came into being, like there's no accident. There's man and women, right?
Hmm.
So you can feel the duality of the energy, and so that's no accident. But it's also like the focal point of so much distortion, so much problems between relationships, so much problems between
Yeah.
everything, right? And also the lack of integration on the masculine end with a lot of really big energies is that was a real focus point for me because I'm just like, what was the purpose of it? Where does it sit? And also being a place of being rather than saying anything. So could you go into the higher energies, right? Could you go into the really really pure stuff that every time I went there, it was like it was very feminine in its essence. But could you go there and retain your masculine essence and still go there?
Hmm.
That was the question I asked. And that was like, and then doing it was just like, no, this is really important because it's the dance between two, which I feel like hasn't been around for a long time. Like just being in the working field for so long with, managing men. Like that was the thing I did for a long time. Like I had 6 or 7 people underneath me. So like seeing that and seeing what
Hmm.
the expression was and how we go through things and how we manage stress and how we do this and how we do that. And it's just like it makes a lot of sense to me. But every time I've talked to like been around men or had male clients, it's like the masculine system always feels like a split. Sometimes a triple split, sometimes a quadruple
Hmm.
split, but it's like your physical representation and your true essence, like that walk between the two, always feels like a big walk. And it's just like that makes sense to me because I
Yeah.
don't feel like the masculine essence, the true one, like the true embodied masculine essence, has been like integrated into the physical in a way in a long time, if ever,
Yeah.
basically.
I agree.
So it's like actually walking that walk and then, but the reference point in the mirror is with the feminine, right? We need each other more than
Hmm.
like we know without neediness, without attachment,
Yeah.
without like all of that. But there is this focal point where it's just like, no, there's no accident for any of this. And it's showing up, right? To show up in that way, in that true form. So a lot of those messages come through. And then the video series that has come up was like the masculine initiation, right? That's where most of the videos are on my channel, anyways. And what's fun with that is that my essence can go through it, right? And go through it on my own time. When I turn on that camera, my essence changes. And
Mm.
so what I've realized is that watching those, you actually see in real time the initiation and the integration happen before your eyes. So it's just like it's very fun to be a part of that because just like whatever topic, there's been some that I've been very uncomfortable about, like the committing to love. I have one video on that where it's just like that was I was squirming the entire way, not wanting to do it, but it was the thing that was laid in front of me, and I'm just like, okay. And that was then you see it in real time, the actual integration happened. And I'm just like, okay, that was not my intent, but that's what was given. And just like, this is what you're doing. I'm just like, okay, I guess that's part of it.
I totally have gotten that from the videos I've seen of you.
Yeah.
Is it's not like you're like, I'm gonna go in with this. You just turn it on and you're kind of like, and it comes to you in the moment. And that's where I see the authenticity and the rawness
Yeah.
of what you're saying. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. The vulnerability too. Like that was a really key part of the whole thing. Like just to watch it unfold. Cause it was very fun. Cause
Yeah.
like, I'll be honest, like I knew that this was going to happen, being pulled into the public eye.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I didn't want anything to do with it. So my prayer was basically to my own soul and source was just like, look, if you want me there, you're going to have to pull me. And then I was pulled. So I'm just like, okay, like that old thing, but you careful what you wish for. Cause I was just like, I don't want to go. And just like, look, you asked me to pull you in. It's like you're getting pulled. And it's just like, now it's just time to show up. And we're just like, okay, fair enough. So
I can relate. Relate. And yeah, because it's like it's a lot of what you're saying in your videos is if someone gave you a prompt and then was recording you, but you're doing this yourself. You're kind of putting yourself on the hot seat.
yeah, well, and that's like I'm the channeled thing
Yeah,
basically. So the vessel like happens in the midst of it, right?
yeah, absolutely.
But it's also like so a lot of times when I start the videos, I say when I open the door. So like that's opening a door, and
Mhm.
I'll get like certain things that want to come in. Basically, sometimes it could be my own process, right? So that's where it's like sharing the new stuff that has come in, basically, and that initiation through it all, basically, through the dance between two, because you're relating it to the feminine, right? Because it's like this huge back and forth between the feminine collective and the masculine collective.
Mhm.
So that's actively happening, but you're watching it on the energetic scene. So you're just like, okay, what is actually happening here? What's happening here? And then other times it's like from specific things, right? So one of them was Lady Guadalupe, which I actually visited. She came in. And then when
Mhm.
that came in, I'm just like, okay, what is this? What do you want to say? And then it's also been like birds, something else. Like there's always something that comes in that opens the door in a specific way. And I'm just like, okay, I know that this is bigger than I can currently see, and you just roll with it and you continue.
Yeah. Another thing you said that I really liked that this is a newer revelation for me is in my spiritual experience and journey, I felt more connected to the spiritual subtle realms, more of like I would say the right-brained
Mm-hmm.
intuition, intuitive nature. And that's where I felt as a man, I was bridging the gap between as myself as a man and the masculine collective and our sisters who that's generally more their sphere.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm on my own journey to embody more of my masculinity and balance that out, there was this concern about the more I anchor into a more even traditional kind of masculine energy, would I lose that connection? But what I came to was like, no, I want to be it all. I want to be just as grounded and real and present as the deepest roots and like bedrock, as well as connected to the highest realms that go far into the universe and other realms unknown.
Yeah.
I want to be that full embodiment.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate hearing you say that in your own way.
Yeah. Well, because it's not like limiting, right? It's kind of
Absolutely.
like there's no to do one, there's not a sacrifice with the other. Kind of like
Mhm.
you need it all, you need to do it all, basically. Like to go into the dark, but also be able to go into the light, right?
Mhm.
And be able to hold those essences. And if it's called for, true, being the man within the feminine places, right? But
Mhm.
also being able to be the man within the masculine places. Like, can you hold both, right? And then also your internal feminine. Like, where does that sit? How does she feel about you? Because that's been a whole journey too, the internal union within, right? Of holding all those charges and feeling where you've disrespected your own energy. And it's interesting to see the mirror reflected outward when it's actually a reflection of what's happening inside. So all of it and going through and just showing up basically and then feeling that and being willing to go through the initiation because there is a test, right? That's the reason why I use the word initiation because it's just
Mhm.
like as much as I would love for it to just happen, in some ways it does,
Mhm.
there is something that is uncomfortable or something that has to be worked through to be able to go through it. Basically, that's been my experience. It's just been
Yeah.
like, this is an initiation because it's not comfortable. It's like things are integrating. This is everything I want. And there's parts of myself that would just love to sit on the couch and not have to do this. Right. And it's honoring all of that and then giving a place. I think one of the funny things that happened recently was so I talked about like early on not having a choice, basically, and just doing this.
Mhm.
Well, there was a part of myself, an aspect of self that was left outside the door through all of this.
Yeah.
It was very bitter, right? But it was also the foundation of some of my self sabotage through all of this. And that aspect of self did not trust me whatsoever, was
Mhm.
very pissed. And I completely understood why, because it was just like, no, I've demonized you. Like all my self sabotage, all that kind of stuff. You were the focus point, and I just demonized you. And I get it. And what was interesting was what laid down in front of me for my own journey was that choice was now taken back, right? It was my choice whether I wanted to continue with this. So I had been pulled along, which was needed, but now it's just like, no, you need your action part of this.
Yeah.
And I was just like, of course, but it was like an 80% of course, because that part had been left outside. So welcoming that back in and then seeing all the things and being like, look, I'm never gonna self-sacrifice myself in order for anything outside ever. So this is the thing. If we're gonna do this, we're gonna have to like if we say yes, all of us, all of me is on board. So
Mhm.
that was the discussion, right? Because it's just like, are we up for this? Are we not? Because if we say yes, then there's no turning back. So that's when your energy kind of clicks in because you need that choice aspect again to come in and continue because it's not always pretty.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard, right? And that's where it's like there's parts of yourself that don't want to do it. And if they don't have a say, then you can't fully come forth.
I just know that even to me, that's part of union as well, is the integration of all self. Like, it's not just the masculine and feminine side of myself, but there's even a part of me that I would deem like the unideal that was left out in the rain while everyone else is inside enjoying a hot, nice meal. And that was
Mm-hmm.
something that I came to realize. I was like, dude, come on in. Like, I'm so sorry. I've deemed that part of you, of me.
Yeah.
As much as I like to own and take in so many other things externally, like I always, my verbiage is brothers and sisters because I like to say we're all one, we're a part of each other. But yet, look at my own internal fragmentation that I'm disowning and not taking responsibility for. And I was like, oh shit, dude. And I just, yeah. So, what message do you have for our sisters who'd be listening?
Mm. Ooh.
Hmm.
Oh, I gotta go one for that. Yeah. So what's come up recently, I would say your rage, like the feminine rage, is like there's no need to dim it down, honestly. Like a true masculine, like in the true masculine energy, right? Because how I see it is that it's a part of you, right? Because rage and anger is just a piece of it. So if the masculine energy can't handle that, then it can't handle all of you because it's just a piece of you. So
Yeah.
really, like, not to dwindle your rage, but also the masculine energy in its true form can handle it too. And if anything needs to be said, like, you can say it. And I actually encourage it and bring it because it's just like that's part of it. Because what's true will stand and what's not will just fall away. And like the true essence of that, that's where it's kind of like the encouragement of the masculine system, of that true brightness of who you really are, honestly, at the end of the day. Any aspect you think that a man can't handle it, I'm just like, I would test that. I would
Mm,
truly test that, honestly.
I love that. And that reminds me of Kali, goddess Kali,
Mm.
when she's in her rage, just like cutting off the heads of ego, right? In this wild, just rageful expression that's beautiful and divine, just as
Yes.
much as all other aspects of her.
Yeah.
And Shiva comes in, not like wigged out or anything. He just comes in and he loves her. He loves her for that. Thank you for your rage. And
Yeah.
that, like, even that can bring her to where she needs to go, where she needs to be
Yeah.
from that point.
Well, I mean, like, it's so bright and it's so much like feminine essence in its true form. Like, it is a ton of energy and it's amazing, right? And if there's some points of, like, using myself as an example, if there's some point of my system that's triggered, I'm going to thank you because, like, it's going to be some part of my essence that I hadn't seen before and be like, perfect,
Yeah.
I'll go work on this, right? But if it's not, then whatever's expressed, like, because anger, I think a lot of people look at it and be like, well, like, it can get unbalanced. And it's just like, it's truly can. Like,
Yeah.
but if you keep it within, it's not going to do anything good because its true form is just expressing something that's unfair, right? So my system, and I think this is the dance between the masculine and feminine, it's just like, well, what's true is just going to land. And
Mhm.
whatever else, like, is, it's fine. It just needs to be expressed, but I'm not going to take that as gold. Like, if I'm in an argument, or not even an argument, if there's energy being directed at me, whether personally or just the masculine system in general,
Mhm.
it's just like, well, whatever's true will land and whatever's not won't. And that's fine. But I encourage you to really shine. Like, because anger's got a limited charge, it's not infinite.
Yeah.
So it needs to get out and needs to balance. So, like, bring it. Like, actually, really go for it, honestly, because it's just a piece of you. And if the masculine system can't handle that, it can't handle all of you. So that's a good test, anyways.
Absolutely. And that's why I love men's initiations and group gatherings is that the ones I have experienced is training each other to take that fury and that rage and to be unbothered and untriggered and not the little boy coming up taking it personally, but to just honor her, like you said, and allow it, whatever true to come and whatever is not to go away.
Yeah.
And when we need that, when we need to express our rage and anger, doing that with each other is, in my experience, the best way to do that.
Mm, yeah.
And speaking of which, do you have any message for our brothers watching?
Well, along the journey, like, fall, my old messages would be always like, fall faster and go all through this. But in my experience, like, asking for help is not a diminishment of your own. Honestly, if it comes in, like, follow that and just allow it to happen. Some of the best moments have been from watching it enter my stream because I was allowing it to. I had opened up to it, basically. And then the help came in at the right time. But also, when you feel that kind of, like, instability,
Mm.
to question it and go deeper, basically, and figure out where it leads, because it's a deep process to find that masculine stability point within your own system. and just to keep following it and just follow the breadcrumbs until you can be stable within your true essence, regardless of anything else. But listen and follow the breadcrumbs. And then if you feel like you can ask for help, like honestly, because in little moments when it's especially between men, that's where I thought was very interesting because it's just like there's certain avenues along my journey where it's just like the men that were present. It was just like me asking them for help or guidance or etc. Even if they quote unquote weren't on my level of depth, right? But just that simple action moved more than I thought was possible because
Yeah.
it was actually seeking that and being like, look, can you do this? I need help with this. And they showed up and it was very fun, but it was a dance between both of us. And it's very amazing to watch it, basically. Yeah.
I know that from my experience of asking for help and even asking for help from other brothers, other men. More recently in my life, I've been so surprised about the support that I got that I couldn't even imagine that I would have gotten from individuals who I would have assumed and even, distortedly egoically thought that weren't on my level, but and held that space, gave
Yeah.
me what I needed. And even if it wasn't like they gave me, like they said the right thing, but just them listening and witnessing me was worth so much more and allowed me to be redirected and to get what I needed.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think there's such a beauty of us all helping each other. And like Ram Dass says, we're walking each other home. We're all just walking each other home
Yeah.
and being there for each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you ask for help, you can break the ice too for others, individuals who need to do that as well.
Well, and I get it because I mean, just to give credence to the other side of that, I mean, it is very vulnerable and your energy is very opened in some of these instances.
Yeah.
And any old help from anyone sometimes won't do the trick, honestly, because it's
Yeah.
very delicate. Honestly, sometimes, people can want to help, but they would do more harm to your system. I completely understand that.
Oh, yeah.
And along my journey, it was being opened to it and then watching it come in and then actually taking the initiative to go forth and ask. That's what was really important, how this all came together. So there was moments where it was like, I remember this because I went to my cranial psychotherapist. So that was a whole other thing, right? You came back to Montana from England. First thing was find a cranial psychotherapist,
Mhm.
found one. Perfect. She helped me along the way, right? And then one day it's just like, well, you should go talk to Pete. And so, like, showing up, talk to Pete. And then it was, we exchanged numbers, nothing ever happened. And then one day I just got a wild hair and I felt it. And I'm just like, no, I should call Pete. And I'm just like, hey, and that opened the door. But it was all these checks and balances, right? Jen and Tanya Rita, like when I first met them, like Velvet was great. Velvet, when I first met her, I was very like so overprotected of my system that it was to the nth degree. But talking to Velvet, like it was these little checks that actually opened my system. And I'm just like, you're good. Jen
Mm.
and Tanya Rita were, my system was up. Like it was just like, nah, I don't know about you guys. Right. But then it turned out just talking to them, like what happened was we ended up at the same stone circle different times in Portugal that not a whole lot of people know about.
Wow.
And when I felt it within their system, my entire system went, nope, they're good. And my entire system just opened. And I'm just like,
Mm.
okay, like I can trust you guys. Right. So I get it. Like trust is a whole thing. Treat your system with a lot of respect. It's not
Yeah.
anybody can help it. And also there's a great level of discernment that is required within this. But it's also like following it and then when it comes up to know the discernment and then follow through. Not that you have to do it on your own, right? There are certain points where it takes a village, honestly, because your
Mhm.
system's holding so much, it's integrating so much, right? And you can do it on your own if you want to. But it's also like there are certain avenues where it's just like, look, that helps there if you want it. And it's not like you're cheating yourself, like you're betraying the initiation if you do it, if it comes in the right way.
Hmm. Thank you for also mentioning that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thank you so much for being here, Connor.
Thank you, Matt. It's been an honor. It's been very fun.
Yeah, I was very enlightening, and I'm very fortunate to have gotten to finally have sit down and speak and share with you. It was a privilege,
Yes.
brother.
It's been amazing. Thank you. Yeah.
And thank you all for listening. I will link all of Connor's information that whatever you want to link below Connor, I will link it below so you can check out his YouTube channel, his website, offerings, and any closing statements you wish to share.
Have fun with the adventure because at the end of the day, it still is. So even in the darkest moments, like it's still an adventure. So how you can see the light even there.
Mm. Oh, love that. Thank you, Connor Homan, for being here.
Thanks, Matt.
And thank you all for watching. Let me see where the light. Oh. If this episode and series resonates with you, and you're interested in delving more into men's work, I will be creating an online men's group program coming up here very soon. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out to me via email that I'll flash here on the screen now and link below. I would love to talk to you if you had any questions, meet you, and learn more about you and what you would like from your healing experience and journey as a man who is awakening to his fullest and greatest potential. And to connect with other brothers who are like-hearted. And if you would like to work one-on-one with me, I offer distance energy healing sessions over Zoom, and you can reach out to me via email to inquire about those as well. And for all my other content, you can check out here on YouTube. For my other podcasts interviewing other healers and their gifts and medicine that they could offer you, to series about what I envision and I feel New Earth and the New World could be like through a few short stories and chapters, to discussing with other spiritual and new thought leaders about what is going on and how we can address, see, and live our best lives here and now. Thank you so much. Have a great day.